Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Tectonic Lounge by Code Engine Studio, where we're talking with business leaders and folks we seek out to who solve problems with technology. And mostly we're focusing on business problems that are solved with technology, whether it's development, whether it's an alternative approach to data, whether it's an alternative methodology. So today, all the way from beautiful sunny California, with us is Taro from Praedicat.
Nice to be here. Thanks for having me, Serge.
Yeah, so we've worked together on some projects before, and today we're not talking about those projects, but I wanted to kind of get your feedback or your input on this whole idea of how we've modernized mass data problem solving. Would that be the right way of putting what you guys are doing?
What we're doing at Praedicat, and it's one of the great things about working there, is we're trying to make the world a better, safer place for human beings. And we're doing that.
Good goal. I support it.
Yeah,
but how is technology
bad.
helping you do that? Let's put it that way.
Well, you mind if I tell you a little story? I'm gonna ramble here. If I ramble too much, you can cut me and leave me on the editing room floor.
Nah, it's all good. We like stories.
Okay. Remember asbestos? Asbestos. Horrible mineral, right? But half a decade ago, it was the wonder mineral. And it was used in tons of consumer products, from your household usages, but it was even the snow that people used at Christmas to decorate their Christmas trees. And it was everywhere. It was ubiquitous. And once the link between asbestos and cancer was established through science, it caused the largest litigation loss in the insurance industry's history. Or I should say insurance loss in the industry's history. It's, I think, over $100 billion and still happening. So here we are 50 years later. What's the next asbestos? And that's what we at Praedicat is the question we're trying to answer. So it's very interesting, because what Praedicat does is they use artificial intelligence, large language models, just all kinds of different technology, which you'll have to talk to some of the tech people to get a deeper dive into. But they use that to scan and monitor the breadth of scientific, scholastic, and legal literature. And they look for things that are starting to rise and percolate up into what looks like the potential harms to humans, to the planet. So, and you have to remember that before any kind of litigation, mass litigation ever begins, it's going to have a distinct footprint in science. Reason being, you can't sue somebody for bodily harm if you don't have any scientific evidence that what you're suing about is harmful. So now, understanding the arc of and tracking and monitoring these harms through this methodology, we have been able to anticipate what things might come to mass litigation, what things are going to be harmful. And that means a variety of things. First thing it means is, if we were around way back when in the 50s, asbestos wouldn't have happened. We would have been able to catch it, tell the insurance agencies who are our clients that asbestos is harmful. They would raise their premiums. And in doing so, the companies that produced products with asbestos would change their business activities. So what we're trying to do is make the world a better place through the vehicle of insurance.
What I appreciate from it the most, not even getting the technology part, is that we're letting the business tools in life create a solution before the problem even happens, right? Because essentially you're forcing somebody to make a choice let's say I was making a product, I don't know, I have a beard, so I use beard oil. And let's say that beard oil contained an ingredient that was likely to get me to go to blind. Now, obviously, as a consumer, I don't know that, but as a manufacturer, I may not know that either. And if my insurance company would let me know and say, hey, if you continue to use, whatever this particular ingredient is, we're not going to be able to insure it, or your premiums are going to quadruple, I'm going to go to my guys on the assembly line or on the manufacturing planning, go, all right, we got to find a better plan. We can't use this ingredient anymore. This is not something that's going to be good for our business. So this is not about more regulation. This is not about, Big Brother telling you what to do and what not to do, but it's about using the power of business, essentially the levers of modern business, right? And I think that's a very powerful one where we have that balance with insurance as well. So getting back to the tech side of things for a second,
Sure.
the reason that this is needed is because the sheer volume of data that's growing, right? That we got so much more data, and it's not just US based or Canadian or whatever else. You got all this volume, so it is impossible for a manufacturer to even search every single thing that comes out, and it keeps coming out regularly, right? Scientific data, research data, legal data.
100%. I mean, and it's constantly updating and evergreen, and keeping up with that big data is, and sifting through it and having that ability to do that is, I mean, for a long time nobody had done it. And for a long time, and before Praedicat came about, there just wasn't any ability to have this kind of anticipatory vision about what things were going to be harmful and what were not. The way people would do it was they would look at historical data. And if you look at historical data, when you're trying to, price something that's innovative, I mean, those two things are just opposites. You're right. Looking at historical data for something for innovation, you're not gonna be successful.
Right. Nobody can tell you whether what something you haven't done before is actually good or bad, right? Until you actually do it, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think that what you were saying about using kind of the machinations of business to drive change is one of the things that I think is fascinating. And, you have to believe that while people want to make a profit, they also want the world to be they don't want to cause harm to people. So, a lot of the difficulty is trying to understand for these folks how that balance can take place. And it's something that, becomes easier. The equation, I guess, of identifying emerging risks, using technology, identifying emerging risks, that used to be the problem. Now that's right. No longer the problem. That problem has been taken care of by technology. It's been taken care of by AI. It's been taken care of. It's no longer an issue. Technology has solved that problem. And now what we can do is focus on, okay, these are the harms. This is my portfolio that I have to manage. How do I best manage it? Having this kind of knowledge not only allows you to, for the insurance industry, it allows the insurer to do what they should be doing, which is insure the businesses so they can innovate, so that they can take leaps forward. And
not spend all the time in the courtroom, right?
Well, not even that, but like an insurer. So you take something like PFAS, which is one of the things that we're looking at is the next asbestos. It is ubiquitous. It's a crazy, crazy harmful chemical. And, a lot of insurers, their initial reaction is just to exclude PFAS from coverage. And that's not what insurance is about. Insurance is not about just trying to exclude the bad things and to underwrite the good things. It's to make sure that the companies can do what they need to do to try to mitigate their PFAS exposure and usage and things like that. So it allows for innovation on a variety of different levels.
So from an insurance perspective, I understand from a innovator, an inventor, manufacturer perspective, do they work with your data as well? Do they look at your findings as well, or they just really go through the insurance companies?
They do. We do serve. We interact with a lot of product stewards, and are involved in a lot of product stewardship programs. Let's go back to your beard oil. Let's say beard oil chemical A is the thing that's causing you blindness. So they're going to take that out, but they're going to try to substitute it with beard oil chemical B or C. Well, previously, that company would just kind of test them out and see which one flew. But now we have all of this data that we can look at B and C, and we can kind of anticipate which one is going to be harmful and which one is going to be better for you. And then so that when they substitute that chemical, they can use the one that's going to be less harmful and less likely to be litigated against. Does that make sense?
And that's an exciting thing because it also saves you time and money on additional trials, potentially, or you can do them at smaller scope. Because if you already have the
Absolutely.
data on previous studies done on chemical B and you know it's not going to be good, you're not going to waste time studying that one. You're not going to waste time testing that out in the product. So I think that's a good thing. So back to the work of Praedicat, you guys obviously use, you have your own search mechanisms, you have AI that's helping you out. How does the human factor come in this? Because I know you have science people on staff. Is there a human validation to the bias removal? We just had a recording actually with somebody who's a scholar of AI from St. Andrews University in Scotland. He talked about that there's a risk when we let AI make decisions for us and not have humans attached. So I'm very curious, what is the human and technology interaction for making, shall we say, data decisions?
Oh, for sure. We have a team of data scientists, modelers, and they're really it's a robust group in our company. And they're looking at the data and they're constantly recalibrating our models so that the scenarios are more accurate and to meet the challenges that our clients are also facing that are, because the landscape is constantly changing. I mean, right now, oh, I'm going to get the numbers wrong, so forgive me. But like before, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, I think there was like one mass litigation every couple of years or something like that. This is not 100% correct, but like now they're averaging 4 or 5 mass litigations every year. And one of the reasons is that there's massive amounts of litigation funding, and litigation finance is now a thing. People are taking bets on court cases, which
There's an
is,
incentive to litigate, right?
yeah, which is nuts. And now that asbestos is kind of going away, these litigators who have been looking at asbestos are now looking at, okay, what's the next thing that I can hook into and use some of the kind of the methodology and approaches that I used with asbestos with a new harm agent or litigion agent, as we call them. And I mean, you start to look at and this is just stuff that we've caught in with our technology before litigation started. It's like talcum powder, opioids, glyphosate, which is Roundup, which caused cancer, PFAS and PFOS, chlorpyrifos, I think I'm pronouncing it chlorpyrifos, which I think is another insecticide or pesticide, and paraquat is the same. Here's an interesting one. Arsenic in baby food is one that we caught. And what scientists started to see was that with climate change, the ground was getting more arid and dry,
Mm-hmm.
which caused rice to, I think, draw in more arsenic, natural organic arsenic from the ground. And there was a proliferation of arsenic in baby food.
Right.
And that was, that became a court case.
So I lived in China for a few years, and I remember the conversation that even going back to like I think the Ming Dynasty or whatever, people had records of when it was drought, and I'm kind of remembering this. When there was specifically drought, more people would get arsenic poisoning from rice, even at that point, right? Because
Mm.
you have a lot more of it that's going into the rice, and people are eating it in high concentration. But obviously, for babies, you need a lower concentration of it anyway. So I guess my question is, this is going to be a spicy one, so hold on to your hat. We've had scientists or authorities make statements that something is bad for you, but then come back and say, "Oh, we were actually wrong, and it's not bad for you," or something is bad at really high doses. So how do we make sure that we don't over? And I understand that your clients are insurance companies, you're trying to protect them from being sued, and they have to be careful and they have to make some of their own decisions as well. But how do we make sure we don't over panic on some of these things?
Well, two things. One is there is a mechanism for that considers that variable, I guess you would say. And kind of associated with that is this idea of ghostwriting. There were companies that were ghostwriting scientific articles and paying for articles to be written that were, let's say for glyphosate, for example, that glyphosate wasn't harmful. And so these would be entered into scientific journals and literature, and they were just trying to kind of falsify the information.
So
So
how did
that's
you remove
another.
that out of the equation?
That is the details. I can't tell you that. I'm not smart enough. I'm sure that if you talk to the head of our modeling department or any of our guys and gals, they would be able to say. But it is something that they definitely consider. and look
Wow.
at, and also there's also the human element, which you were talking about before, where I think that we have scientists on staff, and they go in and look at the articles and read them, and also put a human kind of judgment and validation on them to see if the article really holds weight and holds water.
Right.
And with the onset of AI, there have been more fabricated articles, and thankfully AI isn't great at writing these articles. You can kind of tell when you read them. So we have the ability to identify those as well and kind of toss them into the gutter.
But as you mentioned, this is going to be a never changing, ever going evolution, because generative AI is going to get better at creating articles. And, I think everybody can benefit from listening to our AI episode and talking about that, why hallucinations are actually expected out of AI. And I think that hallucinations being fake data in many cases. So I think that that's a fascinating thing that you guys are going to have to battle with.
But on the other side of that, right, our AI is going to get better too.
Right. So,
So
it's a never ending push
yeah,
pull thing.
exactly. Yeah. And the other thing that we do, and we do this every couple of years, is we get a third party to validate our model and, take a look at it, test it, and bang on it for better, or worse. And so far, so good. They've come back and validated that the losses we back tested it against asbestos, and ran the numbers of what the losses were versus what we would have anticipated. And they're spot on. Like the accuracy is amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I think that we talked about this as well on another show, is the idea of a black box AI. And that's the scary one, where you cannot back test it and you cannot go back and hold on a second. Does this work for something that we know is accurate, right? So I think it's great that you guys are doing that kind of stuff.
Do you know the scariest piece of AI that I've heard about is, you tell me if you've heard about this, is grief tech. Have you heard of grief tech?
Have not.
Okay. So imagine little Johnny's grandfather passes away. Well, there's little Johnny's grandfather had the foresight, if you would, to leave a long and rich history of himself online. From his own voice to his experiences to his personality, he has put a lot of images, experiences, documented all of this, and his family's done it too. Grief Tech is having little Johnny's grandfather, once he passes away, have an avatar, some AI being, interact with little Johnny and make the pain go away. At the surface, that sounds great. But when they were, I believe what I've heard is when they were running some of these tests, little Johnny's grandfather said things like, "I know that you're sad. Why don't you come join me?"
Whew.
Yeah.
I was waiting for that punchline.
Yeah, things like that. So, like, I mean, talk about mass litigation right there, huh?
Yeah, I was going to say this all ties in very nicely with kind of making a nice full circle, that the idea is to use technology to make the world a better place. And I do think it is a responsibility, and I think this is something that we take seriously with Code Engine, and I think it's something you guys take seriously. It's to ask questions of not just using technology for technology's sake, but be responsible creators of tools, content, machine learning engines, algorithms, whichever tools you end up using, is asking for possible side effects, right? I'm not talking even about, Skynet or anything like that. Hopefully nobody comes after me from the copyright thing here. But the idea would be that we do need to make choices that make sense for the business, that make sense for, possible negative outcomes. I think we worked with a project before the pandemic, so it feels like forever ago, that was actually from Canada, that was going to help find kids who were lost. And as we went through I think it was a low frequency tracking data kind of stuff. And as it went through with a potential, project going on, and we started identifying some of the risks that could be misused of the data and so on and so forth, the client wisely chose to pull back and say, yeah, while it sounds like a good idea and it could solve a problem, there could be others along the way. And they didn't even have to wait for an insurance company to tell them that this would not be insurable.
Right.
So I think it's great. But I do appreciate the fact that I think, on one hand, we have such a volume of knowledge becoming available and more content has been created in the last 20 years than the entire humanity before that, right? Just the sheer volume of content. And it's also, we have now privatization of content, people putting it behind paywalls, making it harder to access some of it, especially the quality stuff. But the fact that you guys have taken the time to create non just AI driven, but overall thoughtful, I would say, abstracts and summaries that can genuinely save people's lives and genuinely improve the life of humankind is what I think is appreciated. Is what I think brings value to what Praedicat does, the way I see it. So
I agree with you. I was in advertising for many years, and when this job came up, I decided I was going to open my own consultancy and was doing very well. And then I met Praedicat, and I couldn't believe what they were trying to do. And it's amazing. And I had said I'm never going to work for anybody ever again other than my wife. And here I am working for Praedicat and being very happy. It's a phenomenal company. I mean, it promotes the public good. Ultimately, we're trying to deliver wide-ranging societal benefit, and through insurance. And the technology application is fascinating. We've been adopted by 9 of the 10 largest casualty insurers and 5 global reinsurers. We've got partnerships with Aon and Experian. Like, we pull data with it from Experian and Velocity EHS, which is one of the big EHS companies. We're doing great stuff, and the company is just chock full of really intelligent, thoughtful people. It's a pretty amazing place to work. Sorry for the Praedicat commercial there.
No, it's totally fine. We like Praedicat. They were a Code Engine Studio customer, and we appreciate the work. I will say this is actually kind of a rabbit trail of what you just said, but I think it's valuable if we have listeners who are more in the millennial Gen Z generation. I know they're very passionate about finding companies to work for that make a difference in the world. And again, there's nothing wrong with working in advertising, but I do think it's amazing when you do find somebody who aligns with this idea of the passion of making the world a better place and making an effort. It's still not going to be the easiest work ever, right? There are days you're probably frustrated and the work is challenging and you need more technological tools and you need more support and other things that happen. But at the end of the day, you know why you do it. And I think that's a valuable thing that I think even the younger folks will appreciate, because I know they're passionate about trying to make the world a better place, even if us Gen Xers sometimes don't care as much. I don't know. So.
Yeah. I mean, the whole idea is, like, if you have this crystal ball that grants you the ability to identify like emerging catastrophic risks before they hit home, that gives you a tremendous power to do something about them, and you put them in the hands of people who can do something about them. It's amazing. I mean, that crystal ball it's technology. Right? It's AI, it's artificial learning, it's machine learning that's combing through all of this data and at scale, and to reveal the various impacts of these various harmful agents on human health.
What I think it ultimately does is, not only is technology deployed here, it puts summarized information in the hands of the people who can make better choices. I think we all need the ability to make better choices in life. I think having that crystal ball, and if you're a company and you have a crystal ball and you can make better choices about your product, hopefully you're incentivized more than just by your insurance company, but that doesn't hurt either. Well, yeah. Thank you very much for spending the time with us, and glad you got a little commercial for Praedicat in. It's not something that people are going to go and, buy their local store, but I think the fact that what you guys do impacts what they buy at the local store, from the beard oil to, hopefully non-asbestos Christmas snow in the can. So hopefully all those things go together. But thank you very much for your time. And for everybody listening, please tune in for the next episode of Tectonic Lounge. We come at you weekly with folks who help solve business problems using technology. Have a great day.